Any other questions? No? All right.
How about when you, as far as like leading the service or the past, just going around the table?
Lots of different ways to do it. It's nice. So if you're going to be having your first Seder this Passover, one nice way to do it, if you're at a place where people are comfortable, is going around the room and everyone reads a part. But there's no right way to do it. You can take volunteers. Yeah, no, that's another one where you'll see it different anywhere you go. All right, you all can keep eating. Traditionally, we would finish our meal, and once everyone was done eating, what do we have to do next before we really end our meal? Before we say the blessing, before we drink our wine, we have to, because what's the last thing we can eat? Dessert, which is the afikomen. Because remember, that was our way of protecting the party from moving elsewhere. So now you guys have to. I've hit it. No one even noticed. If you did notice, don't give it away. I have hidden the afikomen. You guys have to come find it. It could be anywhere. It's somewhere in this room. And it's not touching me, so no looking in my pocket.
Well, it's either.
Well, it's not that.
It's not one of those. No.
Right there.
Oh!
Well,
They didn't have it.
you get $1.
All right. So if some fun things to do, some will have prizes. The fun thing for the kids is that the kids find the afikomen, and we can't end our Seder until we get it back. So we have to purchase the afikomen back from the child who finds it. So some will have prizes. What? You gave it up way too easy. Yeah, I didn't tell you that part yet. So what we'll do, and the way that I like to do it, here's your little trick, right? This is your how-to. Is you take the afikomen, wrap it in, and there are some nice afikomen holders too. But you wrap it up, and then while it's wrapped, oh, I should be careful with the fire. How great would that be? And then you have your afikomen that you can pass around so that everyone gets a piece of the afikomen to, let me get a plate. So that everyone has, oh, this was the matzah of hope. I forgot. We reread it, but I didn't know that we had one. So this was our matzah of hope. All right, so now everyone can have a, let me do a little more.
Oh.
Get your aggression out. There we go. So everyone can take a piece of afikomen that will be the end of our meal. Now, at this point, you eat the afikomen, and the meal is done. There are still 2 cups of wine, but traditionally, one would not be allowed to eat anything else until the next morning. Okay? At this point, we pour our 3rd cup of wine. We're on page 48. Does anyone remember, did I teach you? I think I taught you. There is only one blessing that's commanded in the Torah. I'm not matzah maror Pesach. We're done with that. It actually has nothing to do with Passover. There's one blessing that's commanded in the Torah. I heard something, Shema is a prayer that comes from Torah. It's a verse of Torah. But I'm talking about a blessing before or after you do something. right? Like motzi. Saying a prayer before we eat is not commanded in the Torah. Saying a prayer before we drink wine is not commanded in the Torah. Saying a prayer before we light candles, well, lighting candles isn't commanded in the Torah. So a blessing that we say connected to something we do, there's only one that's commanded in the Torah.
Aaronic blessing?
The what?
Aaronic blessing?
The
Aaronic blessing.
Oh, the priestly, okay, different, right? The may God bless you and keep you, still not a blessing before or after you do, it's not a blessing connected to an action, okay? So I'm not talking about like a poetic phrase, I'm not talking about a nice thing to say, I'm talking about a blessing before or after we do something, which we now know there are all kinds of. There's a blessing after you go to the bathroom. There's a blessing after sex. There's a blessing before you eat. All of these blessings, but they're nowhere in the Torah. There's one blessing in the Torah. I'll give you, it's where we are in the Seder. The blessing after you eat. Fantastic. Fantastic. Birkat Hamazon, the blessing of the meal in, I think it's in Deuteronomy. There's a verse that's part of Birkat Hamazon. It says, Ve'achalta, Ve'savata, Uve'rachta et Adonai Elohecha. That you will eat, you will be satiated, you'll be full, and you will bless the Lord your God. And that's the only time that we talk about a blessing connected, really a bracha, Uve'rachta. You will bless, right? Baruch. That's when Rabbi was talking about roots. So, and this is the only time that Birkat Hamazon is said over a glass of wine. Okay? Now remember, like Kiddush, we say over a glass of wine. Havdalah, the service at the end of Shabbat, you say Borei Pri Hagafen at the beginning, and then you don't drink till the end because the whole thing is over the glass of wine. Do you remember me talking about this? So this Birkat Hamazon, we pour the third cup, and the whole thing is kind of said over the cup of wine. We're not going to say the Birkat Hamazon, the blessing after the meal tonight. And it's not all in this Haggadah. But you see that on page 48. Why don't we can read the English? Let's read the English. We praise, and like I said, the traditional Birkat Hamazon is much longer. But this is one section. We praise you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who in goodness, mercy, and kindness gives food to the world. Your love for us endures forever. We praise you, Adonai, who provides food for all life. May the Holy One who makes peace in the heavens make peace for us, for Israel, and for all the world. I want to clarify what I had just said. Birkat Hamazon, the blessing after the meal as we say it, does not appear in the Torah. Okay? The blessing itself is a conglomeration of a whole bunch of prayers that was put together by the rabbis. The idea of saying a blessing after we eat is what's in the Torah. Nowhere in the Torah does it say, just like it doesn't say Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, right? But it doesn't say you should say a blessing before you eat, right? It doesn't say you should say a blessing after you go to the bathroom. So even though the blessing itself is not in the Torah, it says you should say a blessing after you eat. Does everyone understand? Okay. So we say our Birkat Hamazon. We're at Barech, if you're following along on page 10. Then we have our third cup of wine, so we lift our cups. And again we sing, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Borei Pri Hagafen. We praise you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who creates the fruit of the vine. L'chaim. A couple traditions with the wine that I forgot to tell you. One, and again, none of these are law, these are all customs. One custom is that as a way of celebrating freedom, you should never pour your own wine during the Seder. So that neighbors should always be pouring for one another, so that you're always being served. Another tradition, and I don't remember the rabbi, and it's in the Haggadah that I use at home, and one rabbi at the beginning of every Seder would spill wine on his white tablecloth. And he would do it so that no one else would feel bad if they did so later in the evening. And after 4 cups of wine, you know, the chances of it happening are pretty high. Now, in the middle of our Seder table, we always have another cup, which is a cup for Elijah. And Elijah, in our tradition, has Rabbi talked about Messiah with you all at all? No? But as part of, did I talk about Messiah? Have we talked about Messiah?
We talked about the difference for Jews.
Okay, so in Judaism, the big difference with Judaism and Christianity is that in Judaism we don't believe that the Messiah has come yet. In Judaism, the tradition of the Messiah is not about a Messiah who comes back again. The Jewish Messiah comes, does his thing. And the Jewish Messiah is introduced by the return of the prophet Elijah. Elijah, and it's very interesting, and I don't want to go so far into it, but Jesus, when you read the stories of Elijah, in a lot of ways the stories of Jesus parallel the stories of Elijah. Theologically for the Christians, you know, part of that is that the connection between Elijah and the Messiah. Jewishly, we would say that a lot of the stories were copied, right? Because that was biblical precedent for someone who performs miracles and someone who never dies. Elijah is brought up to the heavens without ever dying, which is why he ends up being connected to the Messiah Jewishly, because since he never died, he can return and announce the coming of the Messiah. Okay? Now, as long as I'm there, the difference between traditional Judaism and some more progressive Judaism is, in addition to not praying for the rebuilding of the temple, in the Reformed prayer book, prayers for the coming of the Messiah have been changed. And instead of talking about praying for the coming of the Messiah, we talk about praying for the coming of a messianic age, right? The idea that, you know, I'm not going to say there's not a Messiah. I don't know. I could be wrong. But the idea that we're not waiting for a Messiah, that we are doing what we can to build a world of peace. There's a book. I haven't read the book, but it's a great title. There is no Messiah, and you're it. Right? So that we're not waiting for the coming of a Messiah, but we're acting as if it's us. Now that presents a problem in a lot of our traditions, because a lot of the traditions are based around this. So sometimes we put our reason behind and just do the tradition. And Elijah and the traditions based around Elijah are one of those. And Elijah doesn't only pop up at the Passover Seder. When else do we hear about Elijah?
Circumcision.
Good. Good. We have the chair for Elijah at the circumcision. When else? Every week. Not Shabbat, but when do we talk about Elijah? I know this was a few months ago. Eliyahu HaNavi. Abdallah. Good, because as Shabbat ends, right, traditionally we pray for the time when every day will be Shabbat. When will every day be Shabbat? When the Messiah comes. So, and do we still sing Eliyahu HaNavi in the Reformed Synagogue? Yes. And we still have Elijah's cup. So,